Liana had always believed that dreams belonged to extraordinary people, until the day she realized the only thing standing between her and Oxford was a language she could barely speak. And that was the moment everything in her life began to change. The road to Oxford. By the time Liana stepped off the bus that morning, the sky over her hometown was still wrapped in a thin gray haze, the kind that made everything feel heavier than it already was. She tightened her grip on the strap of her worn-out backpack and whispered to herself, "Oxford, Oxford, Oxford." Saying the word aloud always gave her a strange mix of excitement and fear. It sounded elegant, powerful, almost unreachable, like a dream made of polished stone. Liana was 18, a girl with big ambitions and a stubborn heart, living in a small city where opportunities were rare and dreams were often dismissed as unrealistic. But she had a goal that refused to leave her mind. She wanted to study linguistics at the University of Oxford. The thought alone made her pulse quicken. The problem? Her English wasn't good enough. Not yet. 1. The first step, a promise to herself. She had made the decision 9 months earlier, on a late October evening. She remembered sitting on the floor of her room, surrounded by English textbooks, YouTube videos paused at complicated explanations, and her own messy notes. She had attempted to read an academic article written by an Oxford professor, and she had understood almost nothing. She had cried that night, not out of weakness, but because she saw clearly how far she was from where she wanted to be. After wiping her tears, she stood in front of the mirror and said firmly, "If I want Oxford, I will become the kind of person who earns Oxford." It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a promise, too. The early challenges, confidence versus reality. Liana's first major challenge was confidence. Speaking English terrified her. Whenever she tried to form sentences, her mind would freeze. She knew the words, but they hid from her tongue. Her English classes at school weren't very helpful. Her teacher was kind, but classes were overcrowded, and the curriculum focused more on memorizing grammar rules than actually using the language. One day, during an oral exam, she mispronounced the word comfortable 3 times. Her voice trembled. A few students in the back whispered and laughed. When she sat down, she whispered to herself, embarrassed, "How can I ever get into Oxford if I can't even pronounce simple words?" That moment became a turning point. Instead of giving up, she decided to work harder. 3. Immersing herself in the language. Liana threw herself into English like never before. She changed everything around her. Her phone language became English. She started watching movies only with English subtitles. She kept a notebook of new vocabulary, writing words like intricate, resilience, inevitable, scholarship, every time she heard them. She downloaded podcasts about history, science, and literature, even though at first she understood only 30% of them. At night, she would lie in bed with her headphones, listening to native speakers talk about topics she barely grasped. Sometimes she paused every 10 seconds to check words in the dictionary. Sometimes she fell asleep mid-episode. But little by little, she improved. One night, after months of practice, she realized she had finished an entire podcast episode and understood most of it. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness this time, but from pride. 4. The speaking barrier. Her biggest fear despite her progress. Speaking English remained a mountain she couldn't climb, so she created her own method. Every afternoon she walked to the quiet park near her house, sat on a wooden bench, and talked to herself in English. She described everything: the movement of the clouds, how the leaves sounded under the wind, what she learned that day, what scared her, what she hoped for. At first it felt awkward. She stumbled on words, corrected herself constantly, and blushed even though no one was listening. But day by day, she improved. A month later, a stranger approached her at the park. "Wow," he said in English. "You speak very well. Are you practicing?" Liana blushed. Yes. I'm trying." "Well, keep going. You're doing great." Those simple words lifted her heart for the entire week. 5. The Oxford Requirements. Another mountain one evening. Liana opened the official Oxford website and read the admissions requirements for her chosen program. Her heart dropped. She would need an IELTS score of 7.5 overall, academic writing samples, a strong personal statement, excellent grades, outstanding recommendations, and an interview that was entirely in English. She closed her laptop and pressed her hands to her face. 7.5? How? I can barely speak fluently. But after a few minutes, she reminded herself of her promise. I will become the kind of person who earns Oxford. 6. Preparing for IELTS. Tears, grammar, and growth. The IELTS exam became her new obsession. She bought practice books. She watched teachers on YouTube explaining strategies. She set a schedule. Mondays, grammar. Tuesdays, listening. Wednesdays, writing task 2. Thursdays, speaking. Fridays, vocabulary expansion. Saturdays, full mock test. Sunday, rest and review. At first, her scores were terrible. Her listening section was full of mistakes. Her writing looked like a collection of fragmented ideas. Her speaking sounded forced and robotic, but she kept going. There were days she cried from frustration. Days she wanted to skip practice. Days her head hurt from analyzing sentence structures. But something inside her refused to let her give up. 7. The mentor who changed everything. 3 months into her preparation, she met Mrs. Turner, an elderly British woman living in her city who taught English privately. Their first meeting was unforgettable. Mrs. Turner adjusted her glasses, looked at Liana's trembling hands, and said gently, "My dear, you don't need perfect English to get into Oxford. You need clarity, confidence, and curiosity. I can help you with the first 2. The third you already have." Under Mrs. Turner's guidance, Liana learned how to organize ideas logically for essays. She practiced speaking naturally, not perfectly. She learned to think in English, not translate. She analyzed Oxford interview questions, learning how to form deep, intellectual responses. Mrs. Turner believed in her even on days she didn't believe in herself. Sometimes Liana left lessons crying, not from sadness, but from feeling deeply supported. 8. The setback, failure. After 6 months of preparation, Liana took her first official IELTS exam. She waited 3 stressful weeks for the results. Finally, the email arrived. She opened it with shaking hands. Her score was 6.5, not terrible, but not enough, not even close. She felt the world collapse around her. She locked herself in her room and cried for hours. She felt embarrassed. She felt weak. She felt hopeless. That night, she told her mother, "I don't think Oxford is for people like me." Her mother held her hand. Dreams are not for people who win easily. They're for people who continue even after they lose. Those words stayed with her. 9. Rising again. The second attempt, Liana picked herself up. She booked another exam date. This time, she worked even harder, smarter. She focused on her weaknesses. For listening, she practiced with headphones that had background noise to simulate real test conditions. For writing, Mrs. Turner drilled her on structure, coherence, and critical thinking. For speaking, she practiced with real exam questions, recording her answers daily and evaluating her fluency. Slowly, her mock test scores rose. The night before her second exam, she stood in front of her mirror again. "You promised," she whispered. "Don't break your promise." 10. The second IELTS score. The day the results arrived, she couldn't bring herself to open the email. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was beating too fast. She closed her eyes, clicked the message, and scanned the page. She had scored 7.5, exactly what Oxford required. She gasped. She cried again, this time laughing between the tears. Her mother hugged her tightly. "You did it," her mother said. "No," Liana whispered. "This is just the beginning." 11. The personal statement. Her story in words. Next came the personal statement. She spent weeks writing it. She wrote about her passion for language, growing up with limited opportunities, teaching English to younger students as a volunteer, her failures and perseverance, her dream to contribute to language research. Mrs. Turner read her first draft and smiled. "You wrote from the heart. Oxford will see that." 12. The interview. The final battle. When she received an email inviting her to interview, she froze. "It's happening," she whispered. The interview was the scariest thing she had ever done. It was over Zoom, with two professors from Oxford. She could see her own reflection in the corner. Eyes wide, posture stiff. The first professor asked, "What is a language? And how is it shaped by culture?" She took a breath. And then, something remarkable happened. She answered. Fluently, confidently, thoughtfully. For the entire interview, she wasn't the scared girl from before. She was a young scholar, a thinker, someone who belonged in the room. When the interview ended, she closed her laptop and burst into tears of relief. 13. The email that changed her life. 2 weeks later, Liana was in the kitchen when she heard her phone buzz. Subject: admission decision. Her hands shook. She opened the email. She read it once, then twice. Then she screamed, "Mom, Mom, I got in. I got into Oxford." She cried into her mother's arms. All the nights of studying, all the failures, all the fear, all the hope, everything had led to this moment. 14. The lesson she learned. Before packing for Oxford, Liana visited Mrs. Turner one last time. The old woman opened the door with her warm smile. "So," she asked gently, "did you earn Oxford?" "Yes," Liana said softly. "But I earned something even more important." "And what is that?" "Myself." End of story.